consider slavery to be a thing of the past. They would consider it to be something that doesn't happen in the Western world. It only happens overseas in developing nations. This would be a myth. It happens right here in our own country, on our own land. Human trafficking is, in fact, modern-day slavery. It is the world's fastest growing crime, and it generates a profit of $150 billion per year. Of this, commercial sexual exploitation of women, girls, boys, and young men contributes $99 billion, the vast majority of revenue. In 2017, an estimated 40.3 million victims were trapped in modern-day slavery around the world. Trafficking is a pervasive transnational and domestic phenomenon that is happening right now in urban and rural communities across our country, Canada. And so it is with a heavy heart that I come before the House today and talk about this issue. It is not something that we look at from a distance. It is not something that we consider based on stats from other countries. It is not something of our past. It is something of our present. And if we do not take action, it is something of our future. And so as parliamentarians, it is incumbent upon us to take action to make sure that it stops now. Designating February 22nd as National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, I believe, is a necessary step in educating those who are unaware of this crisis taking place across the country. People's lives are being exploited. People's lives are being altogether destroyed. And we have an obligation, I would say, to uncover the horror that is currently taking place on a daily basis and to do something to stop it. And sometimes that something is as simple as speaking up. And sometimes that something requires legislative measure. And sometimes that something requires the RCMP or local police to be involved. Sometimes that something requires border security and safety measures. And sometimes that something requires all of the above. We know that in Canada, 93% of Canada's trafficking victims come from within our country. They're here within our borders. That's 93%. The vast majority of these human traffic victims are women and girls. And again, over 70% of the exploitation that takes place is for the purpose of sexual exploitation. And so it is there that I will focus the majority of my attention today. I believe that there is a great deal of light that has been shed on this topic as of late, especially with Pornhub coming to front of mind. Numerous national articles have been written on the topic, women and girls being exploited online, consent not granted. This is a form of human trafficking, and it is severe in nature and one that cannot be ignored. I believe that prostitution and trafficking are connected, and most researchers would agree with that too. That prostitution in most cases is not a choice, that actually the individual is trafficked. The individual is often underage when they begin, and they cannot therefore legally consent. The individual is often a young girl when she starts, and it is often due to socioeconomic reasons. Again, not exactly a choice. And so it is out of survival then that she enters into the business of selling her body. But sometimes that exchange results in money for her. Other times, most times even, it results in money being given to someone else who is exploiting her body. This is, in fact, trafficking. So I would like to defy the myth then, or challenge the myth, that trafficking is somehow her choice. It is not her choice. It is not her choice. It is not only happening abroad, and it is not a thing of the past. Human trafficking, and especially sexual exploitation, is something that is happening right here in our own country today. I would like to share with you a number of stories, particularly pertaining to the tech giant Pornhub. This, of course, is an online platform where individuals can post videos. Now, it's not necessarily the individuals who are in the videos that are posting them. In fact, many of the videos are posted by other individuals who took these videos, sometimes in bathroom stalls, sometimes during a sex act, sometimes they pressured a girlfriend or another girl in their class, let's say, to present them with nude shots or videos of various accord. Pornhub attracts 3.5 billion visits every month. That's more than Netflix, that's more than Yahoo, and that's more than Amazon. Some have called it infested with rape videos. It monetizes child rapes, revenge pornography, spy cam videos, women showering, for example, or using the bathroom, often underage again. It is footage of women that is then made available online. And I should clarify, it's not just women, it's girls, it's young boys, and some men. But again, predominantly it is women and girls. And so these images then are uploaded and they're made available. Kelly is one victim. And I quote her, she said, "Pornhub became my trafficker. I'm still getting sold even though I'm 5 years out of the life," she said. Another individual, Taylor, she said, "They made money off my pain and suffering." A boyfriend who had pressured her into providing a video had secretly taken it then and posted it on Pornhub. The students within her classroom had it available to them within days. And of course, from there, you can imagine the type of bullying and conduct that took place at school. She talks about walking down the hallways and weeping as she went to class. She then talks about trying to take her life several times, but was not effective in doing so. She now lives with the horror of what has happened to her. Again, an example of trafficking, an example of sexual exploitation. Another individual called it soul destroying. Another individual talked about how they're making money off the worst moment in her life. They're making money off her body. She talked about how 2 American men paid her when she was 16 for a sexual encounter that they then filmed and posted on Pornhub. And even though she asked Pornhub to remove the video repeatedly, they refused to do so. Another individual said it's an assault that never ends. The suffering is unimaginable. She goes on to say, "They're getting so much money from my trauma." Madam Speaker, these individuals are just a handful of the many, many, many women and girls across this country and throughout North America who are consistently exploited. This is a phenomenon that is not just taking place in other countries. This is something that is right here within our own borders. And this is something that legislators have the opportunity to do something about. But it is also something that we must invite the general public to be a part of, which is where awareness and education comes into play. And that's why it's so important that we name a national day, because it helps bring it to light. That every single year we would have this day that would stand as a reminder that these things do occur in our country. But we as the Canadian people do have the power to stop this behavior. We have the ability to stand up for these individuals who are trafficked. And we have the ability to say no more. We have to remember that this is about people. This is about preventing the crime. This is about protecting the victim. This is about prosecution of the offender. This is about working in partnership with various agencies. And this is about empowering victims. That is what this is about. It starts with a day, but my hope is that it would be full, that there would be greater action that would take place, of course, from there. Serena Fleitas, she came to committee a few weeks ago in ethics, and she said this. When asked, what would you tell them? What would you tell the people at Pornhub about what they did to you? And Madam Speaker, I'm wrapping up. She said this, I would tell them that they're really selfish. They need to really look at themselves in the mirror because they're prioritizing money and content over actual human beings' lives, because obviously they don't care that much. I would tell them to look in the mirror and reevaluate themselves. They need to figure out where their real priorities are and not be so focused on money and content rather than real human lives and what they're doing to them. Madam Speaker, we're talking about human beings. We're talking about people. We're talking about their present and we're talking about their future. And so for this reason, because of people, because of their innate value, because they deserve to be stood for, we are asking for this National Day.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the President of the Queen's Privy Council.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I've been listening to the debate for the last few hours, and I thought maybe what I would do is just point out, for a lot of people, when they think of human trafficking, what they think is people living outside of Canada coming to Canada and put into the sex trade in one form or another. And that's true. It does exist. But one of the things that I think is very touching, and I'll give a real case without providing names, of a young girl who was probably 12, 13 years old at the time, who snuck out of the house, that was enticed to sneak out of the house. And that ultimately led to her being trafficked for prostitution. And that's why I think it's absolutely critical that one of the things that we do is we ensure that there's a very strong educational component when it comes to seeing this day being recognized. And I'm wondering if she could provide her thoughts on just how important it is that we have a strong educational component that reaches into our communities, in particular our school divisions.
Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. And as mentioned in my speech, I do believe that education is very important, and it must be a very strong component going forward. Those who are predators, those who seek out young children to then sell them into, let's say, the sex trade, to exploit them, to use their bodies, to monetize them. Those individuals lurk in our schools, they lurk in our malls, they lurk in our workplaces. They are throughout Canadian society. And we must do all that we can to educate young people to identify who these individuals might be in order to keep themselves safe. We must also help parents identify this, and we must help society at large so that we can together protect the vulnerable.
The comment of the Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
Speaker, I've been 17 years in Parliament, and I have never been shocked and as moved as I was by the testimony of Serena Fleitas, who at age 13 was attempting to get a Canadian company to take down the abusive, non-consensual child pornography of her. She had to pretend she was her mother because she didn't want her family to know, and they destroyed her life. And her testimony was incredibly powerful, but what I found most shocking was that when the Pornhub MindGeeks executives came to our committee and we asked them about her case, they said they didn't have any recollection. This is a young woman who's blown their business model apart, forced them to take down 80% of their videos, has caused them massive economic damage, and yet they came to a parliamentary committee and said they couldn't remember any details of her numerous attempts to beg Pornhub MindGeek to take the videos down. I'd like to ask my honourable colleague, is it possible maybe they were just gaslighting her and trying to diminish her value as a survivor? Or are we looking at a company that was so indifferent to allegations and issues of child pornography on their site that they didn't even bother to go back and track the story of what happened to this young woman?
Member for Lethbridge.
I appreciate the question and the reflection of my honourable colleague. Certainly, when you have a business like Pornhub with the parent company MindGeek, they're looking at millions upon millions of videos and hosting millions upon millions of videos, I should say. And so I suppose that it's possible for one's soul to eventually stop functioning, for one's conscience to eventually stop convicting them. I suppose that it is possible for those individuals to forget, and that's a shame. My hope would be that as a Canadian society, that we are not okay with that, and that we would take a stand for these women and girls who find themselves victimized by companies like Pornhub, by those individuals who have posted their videos. My hope would be that we would stand up and say, though they may not have a soul, though they may not have a conscience, we do, and we will hold them accountable. We will take a stand for the sake of this great country and our future. But most importantly, we will take a stand for the sake of those who have been impacted and who could potentially be impacted in the future. Because again, Madam Speaker, this is about people.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London. We have until 1:15 to resume, to finish this debate.
Fantastic, and thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This is such an important conversation that we're having today, and it is wonderful to see the